Welcome to Good Morning Hospitality, your one-stop shop for the latest news, noteworthy trends, and thought-provoking discussions across the industry. From hotels and short-term rentals to all things travel and hospitality, you'll find each episode equips you with the information that you need to start your week. Join us on Good Morning Hospitality every Monday, wherever you get your podcasts.
Good morning.
Good morning. Happy Monday.
Best day of the week. We're back. And we missed last week, but we knew there's some big news breaking. So we waited for our show until Thursday.
Yes. Happy Monday. Welcome back, Jamie Lane, and to all of our listeners who got that special bonus episode last week with Steve Schwab. It was so much fun. What a great week. All the GMH content was cranking out. But Jamie, how you been?
Great. Was that VR Nation last week? Actually sitting with Steve Schwab on Monday. So you could
and me. You're sitting with me too.
And you. It was actually amazing to see Michael in person. It was a nice little surprise. I didn't know you were going out to Austin.
I thought Jamie was joking when he posted he had a 8 a.m. morning session on day 2 of speaking, but
that is so early.
I literally thought it was a joke. It's like, well, I'm not making that one. So
well, it was a full room except for Michael. Couldn't even show up.
Because I literally thought it was a joke. I texted you that morning, like, are you actually here?
I've seen from what I've seen on LinkedIn is that conference, everyone had really positive things to say about it. Is that kind of your takeaway from it as well?
Yeah. And I had a very positive experience there. It was smaller, like 450 people, great vendor hall, and higher ratio of PMs to vendors, but it was still all my favorite people that I like to see. And I think for me, what sort of now makes a good conference versus bad, like if I meet like 10 new people that have never met in the industry before and hear about the cool things that they're building and like actually come away like I learned new stuff, like I feel good and energized coming out of the conference. And that definitely happened coming out of Austin. So I was excited.
Yeah,
that's really cool.
I haven't been to a short-term rental conference in years. So
yeah,
I think the last one was Miami that all of us were in with
Book Direct Show.
So
oh my gosh, that was like the first month that I started the podcast or something like that. I was
in the game.
Yeah. We just had like our 3rd year anniversary birthday type situation. Crazy. Jamie, how was it sitting next to Steve on Monday before closing the deal with Vacasa? Could you feel the tension? Could you feel it in the air, or could you feel the stress? Like, how do you feel? Look.
I don't know. I feel like there's this analogy of like I'm rebuilding a plane while it's flying or like trying to land it or something, where he's got this massive company he's trying to integrate, like change the entire business model from like integrated tech-led property management to a franchise group with like this massive install cost basis, this like 30,000 listings under management now. And then to do all this with all these investors and doing it in a very public way. Like, I'm so impressed that him, Joe, the rest of the sort of Costco team have taken this on. I think if they pull it off, like it's going to be incredible. I think there's a huge upside for them. I think there's huge upside for the industry. But man, I don't envy the position that he's in and the amount of work that it's going to take to do this. So
the amount of work it took to get to this point, and then knowing that it hasn't even started yet is
100%.
But they're bringing in a lot of really good people around them. Carlos, who founded Streamline, is now their CTO. So like they've got some really solid people. Bantac at COO, who ran lots of large companies before. So the people that he's bringing around and the credo that he carries with them, I really hope the credo and the the mission that they've carried for 25 years carries through in a much larger organization, because, you know, based on our chat with him last week, they're in a people business. You know, they're not a tech company. They're not trying to be a tech company like so many people in our space have tried and you know, quite frankly, failed at. But you know, I think doubling down on the people is a great play.
Yeah.
Well, it's the part that's the hardest to scale, right? And so I think that's why because trying to scale, you know, if you have the technology, you have kind of the brand standards, all of that stuff is the stuff that scales easily. The operations, the on the ground, all of that is incredibly difficult. So that's why I really do think that if this is going to work, how they're doing it is the only way, because each franchise can be responsible for their own like ecosystem and instilling those cultural values and having the operations be top notch. And then they get to benefit and leverage the size of such a big company for the other available options. So, and I was glad to hear that they're doing it. Like, they're not just trying to like mash them together, that Vacasa will operate as Vacasa until like that franchise market is sold off and then it becomes a Casa Go company. And I think that makes a lot of sense.
100%. I don't know about you guys though. I got pretty pumped up listening to the interview. I re-listened back because I was like, okay, some people were listening and sending comments and whatnot, and listened back, and Steve had some fire answers. I was like, holy crap. I was ready to run through like a brick wall at the end of the episode. So it was a good time. It was a good time. He had some great answers. I'm super excited.
You guys had what, like 8 last questions? It was, you guys really kept it going.
Well,
I was like, I didn't want this moment to end.
Anytime someone says it's the last question, it is almost never the last question.
Last question.
So it was my last question like twice, but
yeah,
you know, others had last questions as well.
I sent notes to the trio chat with the 3 of us, and I said, next time I'm gonna have our editing team like edit up and like chop up all my questions I asked in a row and just like spread them out. And it's like, all right, spread them out. Like, let's replace the order of things in this audio version at least. I got a little too excited. All right, I was trying not to forget what I had to ask him. So it was a good time though. It was a lot of fun. I had a lot of anticipation building up to that episode. So glad people enjoyed it. Glad we got it out, and glad things are rolling. It's going to be a continued story to report back on. But to segue into today's topics, Jamie Lane, you are the expert that we cover all of the quarterly earnings with. Obviously, you are our in-house economist. You're the voice and economist of the industry. So let's jump into Airbnb's reporting and earnings for Q1.
Yeah, so there is a lot of worry, I think, coming into earnings season on how all the travel companies were going to report. And I think really importantly, how they're going to guide for the year ahead, because the buzzword of the time right now is uncertainty. And we had the airlines sort of report first, and they called it out. Like, and Southwest essentially said we're in a travel recession. They said lower end travelers were not booking. And if you think about the sort of continuum of like the travel ecosystem, people book their flights first, and they book their lodging, and then they book their experiences. So to have the airline sort of call it out, like we're seeing weakness, and I think, and it at least scared me in terms of what we're going to be seeing in terms of the short-term rental data. We had Booking sort of report first, and Booking sort of called out, and they had really strong growth. I think most of their business is still in Europe. They called out strong 12% growth for alternative accommodations, which they've just been crushing it in terms of that growth, 8.1 million listings. And then we had the hotels report, which was way more US focused, way more caution sort of called out on terms of like, and some of them even sort of did upside downside scenarios on like what might happen. Then on what was it, Thursday, we had Airbnb report. They had nights booked at 8%, which, do you guys remember what we were so excited about last quarter for Airbnb?
Supply was finally down.
No, they had re-accelerated to above 10% growth. So they had been sort of 8 to 9% growth for the last few quarters. The question was like, could they sort of re-accelerate to above 10% growth? And last quarter it was 12%. And we were like, all right, they got it. The stock boomed. Then this quarter we were down to 8%, and their guidance for next quarter is about 6%. So we're clearly in sort of a deceleration sort of mode for them. They, I think for the first time, like really dove into US performance. So they called out that inbound international to the US had really slowed, mostly from Canada and Western Europe. And then they even got into booking lead time. So they're seeing really weak bookings for longer lead time stays, more than a month out, especially in lower priced listings. And that really aligns with what we heard from Delta, from American, from Southwest, of lower price sort of main cabin bookers are just not booking forward out for the summer. And they sort of called it out in what they're seeing. And essentially, like, we're not saying that they're not going to book, but they've delayed booking summer travel now to sort of wait to see how things play out. And then what I was really happy that they called out, because as the economist, as the person looking for recession signals, some of the things that we typically see during recessions is guests sort of trading down. They would have picked a luxury home, but they picked a budget one, or they're looking to sort of shorten their stay. So they would have booked 6 days, they booked 4 or 5. And as of now, we're not seeing that. We're seeing the delay on the lower end, but we're not seeing people like fundamentally change the type of stays that they're booking.
Yeah, I think it's interesting just for me, just seeing some of that in our data as well. Like our booking window, which compared to a beach vacation rental company is much, much shorter. And even ours is getting much shorter. And for some, and as we head into our slow season, it's like, oh, how are we going to kind of jumpstart some of those summer bookings? And I'm wondering though, for a lot of the bigger vacation destinations in the summer, people have like booked those stays sometimes a year in advance. So are we seeing that like the listings have the bookings? Like, do you think that those companies are in for like an okay season because some of those travelers have already booked those stays, or is there still some delay on those bookings?
Yeah, there's still some delay. So yes, you get like the really far out and advanced bookings, and that's, I think of it like a cake. Like that's like 10 to 20% of the bookings, and that's your base sort of going into the beginning of the year. Then you get first quarter, where it's like that next layer where it's like 20 to 30%, like people, you get a big surge of bookings in January, February, and that sort of layers in. And then we sort of get to like now. So we're like sitting in early May, like, and like getting forward to like June, July, like peak summer period. And this is when we should sort of be getting those last layers of a cake, and they're not coming. So now it's like, all right, are they going to come last minute? And I need to hold out sort of cutting price because everyone's still going to come. They're just waiting a few weeks longer to actually make those bookings. Or do I really need to start cutting rates because it's price that's now going to induce people to come in where they might not if we sort of hold price? So there's so much uncertainty right now on like, what do? Do you hold line or do you start cutting to try to get people to book?
Yeah, I think I don't know. I mean, you have to think about what your current occupancy rate is. And like, I think that, I mean, especially in the last couple of years, we've seen some operators really lose out because they were trying to maintain like the superficial 2021 highs. And if you just in the reality need to get some money, if you're a month out, like, I don't know.
Yeah. In terms of the numbers that we were excited to see, Jamie, I wanted to see demand outpacing supply. I'm tired of Airbnb pumping supply and matching or not quite matching demand. Great for them, terrible for the industry. There's no consolidation on being able to raise rates significantly or being able to raise occupancy significantly. In fact, it's trending flat mostly rates were. Or only up 2 or 3%.
Yeah, rates were up about 2 or 3%. But they called out it was mostly on mix. So, and what that means is like we're still seeing people booking larger, higher ADR listings, which is pushing the average guest paid rate up. It's not that hosts actually have pricing power and able to raise rates on sort of a same unit sample. So the fact that we don't have a lot of pricing power, that supply and demand are roughly in line, means that any sort of weakness on bookings, weakness in the economy, could send things going the opposite direction pretty quickly.
When do we start seeing a supply decrease?
So we're close. So we've been for now, I think it's like 10 months, like in the US, at or below 4% supply growth. So in an industry that's used to growing 10, 15, 20%, and we've been at sort of 3 to 4% for almost a full year now. In mountain markets, we're flat supply. Like most markets in sort of mountain vacation rental markets are like flat to declining. Out of the 317 markets and sort of how AirDNA sort of breaks up the entire US, 65 of those 317 markets are seeing declining supply. Where we're actually seeing a re-acceleration in supply lately is in urban areas, which actually, like if you think of where the weakness could really be this summer, and if you look at forward pacing, it's urban markets that have high exposure to international guests. Like in urban areas, it's like 15% of guests come from international, and like coastal mountain, like rural areas, it's like 4 to 5%. So like markets like Miami, where supply could be growing, and 25% of stays come from international guests, like that could be a real worry.
Yeah, you also, I think there's the international traveler component, which I definitely think is real. And I mean, we know it's real, but then on the supply side, and not just in an area like Miami, which has like just seemingly endless additions of buildings that are short-term rental friendly, you're also seeing, I think there was this building boom after like with this to keep up with the demand, but then the demand has slowed for actual long-term rentals. So I think that, you might see more buildings that adopt the Airbnb friendly buildings, or like the Blue Grounds of the world going in to try to fill the kind of weak demand in some of these apartment buildings until the long-term rental market catches up.
Absolutely. And if you remember back, Brandy, we both had that prediction for 2024. It's just
a
now
little
finally happening.
Real estate moves slow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've learned anything in the past year. So another super interesting stat. Let's start with maybe a somewhat less interesting, and move to a more interesting one. Airbnb in the earnings said they 80% of their hosts use host tools. And pre going live, some of us had a visceral reaction, and others, had a more sane and logical reaction. They offer a lot of host tools, but there's some that you wouldn't want to touch with a 10-foot pole. And there's others that are great and you should integrate, as easily and seamlessly as you can. What are those tools, Jamie, do you think they're leaning in on the most, and where offers the best host benefits?
Yeah. And as a host that uses both Airbnb and like a PMS, like there's some great tools that Airbnb offers, like as a host. Like I can go in and look at like what my conversions are from like top of the funnel to bottom of the funnel in terms of bookings. I can look at sort of forward dates and what days are people looking at most often. I can look at sort of comparable rentals and what they're charging on dates out in the future, and what's getting booked, what's not getting booked. Like these are all like features that like companies like AirDNA and companies like Guesty and others like have started building in, like Price Labs are building in. But if you think like, and Price Labs, probably the most used tool in the industry, has like 400,000 listings that are part of it. And there's like 8 million active listings on Airbnb. The vast majority of those are like 1 to 5 listing hosts. Like there's so many tools out there that hosts really need to like do their listing right way. They're not using a PMS. they need great messaging tools. They need automated replies. They need saved replies. Like they need to be able to sort of integrate their smart locks in with their listing, like all these things that like us in the sort of professional realm, sort of seeing that PMSs have done, property management systems have done for years. Like Airbnb's finally integrating that all in their app and making it really a one-stop shop for hosts to like use their tool and not have to have a PMS, and sort of making it free for them. Like
That's what they want. That's their
what they
goal.
want.
Exclusivity.
Exclusivity, like make it where you don't need a PMS, because once you get a PMS, then you're more likely to list on Booking, more likely to list on Vrbo. So they've got a strong incentive to make it and give you all the features that you need to be able to host on that one platform.
So on one hand, they're trying to get exclusive single host supply. And on another hand, they're starting to signal legitimate and almost a necessary addition of hotels in their supply. How do those two contradict one another?
Yeah, I think there's certain areas, and like we've been tracking it. So I share data back and forth on the hotel side, so we can see where hotel supply demand is coming in. And like in the urban areas, like hotels are crushing short-term rentals in terms of growing supply, growing share. Like overall short-term rentals are absolutely gaining share of wallet for stays. But in the urban core, hotels are winning. They're winning on regulation. They're winning on options. They're winning on like really creating the type of stays that people want for an urban short-term stay. And if Airbnb has all the eyeballs coming to their site to book those type of stays, and they're seeing really low conversion, I think essentially what they're seeing is we need that hotel inventory because guests want it. And like, how can we sort of better match what guests want with what's available? Because if they don't have what guests want, then they're going to lose those guests. And I think that would be the absolutely worst like result, is if guests stop turning to Airbnb because they're not able to find an option for their stay.
They have, and arguably one of the best hotel OTAs out there, and it just they've done nothing with it. And like, I wish they would do more with Hotel Tonight. It's such a great platform, but the fact that it's just been buried since
They've done
is wild.
Nothing with it except for to push their short-term rental inventory and loyalty to it. That's all they've done.
They also have all these marketing campaigns kind of just, poo-pooing hotels. Like they have the graphics of you're in the box and you're with your family, and so they're going to have to figure out a better, way to differentiate their messaging if they're also trying to add hotel product. And
how do you marry that messaging and we are host centric? We want that, single mom to be able to make rent next month by renting out the ADU.
Well, because it's the reality that like they're not a small private company that can be driven by by their moral compass. They have to answer to shareholders who are freaking out about not having double-digit growth. And if you're tammed out of single moms who can't rent their garage apartment, like you need to add a lot of supply at once, and the hotels are like the obvious way to do that.
But also just think back to being, and ultimately I think they're very guest centric. Like they're going to do
for sure
what continues to drive eyeballs and bookings through their site. And Booking, if you listen to their earnings calls, like they've called it out multiple quarters in a row on how so many of the people that ultimately end up booking short-term rentals on their platform started searching for hotels and ended up booking a short-term rental because it ended up being the best type of lodging for the trip they were taking. So, if guests are coming onto these platforms and with the intent to stay, and if Airbnb's able to, whether they're converting to a hotel or whether they're converting to a short-term rental, guests are going to come where they like to book, where they find a platform that sort of meets their needs. And more like they want a one-stop shop. Like they want to go to Expedia, they want to go to hotels.com, they want to book the flight, the experience, the hotel, the short-term rental and have it all be integrated. They're all sort of pushing towards this sort of super app status. And I think it's going to be really interesting next week when Airbnb does their summer release, like how far into this super app are they going to push? Is it just going to be experiences? Is there going to be more to release on hotels, more on airlines, more on sort of full trip integration? Or are they just going to take this sort of baby step into relaunching experiences with just a little bit more marketing?
Yeah, the experiences to me, I mean, I understand that as part of their ecosystem, but if they really want to compete or, give the traveler what they're looking for as the all-in-one, they have to offer one of these other major components of travel. And, Airbnb has, I think, the best booking experience and guest experience. So you would want that to be your main OTA, I would think.
Yeah, but to quote Michael in the past in certain Airbnb discussions we've had, Brian Chesky thinks in decades. So, we won't. I don't know. It's gonna be interesting. I'm also curious to see because like we had that one summer release where it was epic and huge, and there was a bunch of buzz around it. Icons was released, all this stuff, and then another release later is like, all right, what changed? Group messaging on the app, cool. All right, what are they going to do? AI stuff. When are they going to do anything that's like actually meaningful to the app? And it's like, okay, so it could be a big push, or it could be a very fizzled out event.
Well, I'm going to be there in person next week. I'll be live tweeting from the event, and yeah, I can't. I have actually no idea what they're going to release, but yeah, excited to share with you guys.
Let's make a quick prediction. What's your prediction besides what we all expect experiences? So
yeah,
table that.
Yeah, I think there's going to be a sort of mini release on one other vertical, whether it's like I'm starting to integrate airline or bringing hotels more centric or something that sort of shows investors sort of what's to come in terms of launching other verticals. I think the full release we're getting its experiences, obviously, but I think there's going to be a hint of some other vertical that's going to be coming.
Well, they have been pushing or showing the kind of the loyalty program with Hotel Tonight. So I'm sure my guess is that it would piggyback on that somehow.
Yeah, that makes total sense. And I would probably agree with you. But in lieu of logic, I'm going to go with a bold prediction. They are going to push their co-hosting platform front and center and try and professionalize all this new supply that has no clue what they're doing. So what form that takes, I don't know. Maybe they'll just ban all individual hosts and make them use a professional host. That'd be wild. Not going to happen. But if they're moving into hotels, I think there is there has to be a logical understanding at Airbnb that quality of property and quality of host matter. And that plays more into professionalizing them with tools, sure, but with a co-host or a actual, what we call them in the industry, property management company, makes a ton of sense. So will they do it? I don't know. That'd be a pretty bold move from them, but
yeah,
I'm sure they're thinking about it.
For sure. Well, my prediction, just to be a little bit different from you guys, will be that they're going to create a few more features to be more social media app centric than not. So last update, they did a lot of guest travel updates and messaging updates and all the other stuff. So I think they're going to move more in that direction continuously.
All right.
So
I thought for sure you're going to say Uber, but no.
Well, I'm waiting on Uber. I'm going to hold off. I still believe in the super app. Uber is going to do the super app thing. I don't think Airbnb is going to do a super app, but that's just my opinion. I think Uber is more poised and positioned for it. But that's just me.
The one I can't wait for, I don't think they're going to do it next week, but AI guest messaging. Like, you think of like what the PMSs or property management systems are starting to do well, sort of third party, and then but also sort of bringing it in house, like automated.
I don't know. Brian said that he doesn't see that being like the low hanging fruit for them to like implement AI. Like, yeah, they want to do AI, but they want to do it differently than everybody else by just adding chat.
Right. They've already started doing the like low hanging fruit. Like they've got and over half of the sort of their customer service sort of happening and through AI messaging. They're doing all their sort of review removals happening and through AI. Like they're taking a lot of that low hanging fruit, but it's all like on like back end focus. Like there's nothing sort of front end like helping hosts like operate more efficiently. Like it's all helping them operate more efficiently.
Well, that's a lot of the money is if they can trim down their staff over there and cut down the onboarding and customer service, then that's a lot of money that they're saving. So,
but you want to reaccelerate supply growth, like make hosting easier.
Yeah,
co-host, pro-host,
co-host, pro-host. Well, fun stuff. Happy Monday. Good episode this morning for our listeners. For the live viewers, thanks for tuning in. Paul Manzi, we see you like always. And of course, the many others who have not chimed into the live broadcast. What do you guys got going on this week? Jamie, obviously you did VR Nation last week. Any other conferences, any other travels this coming week or so, or next month even?
I've got VR Nation. They're doing a road show, Sarasota, Florida. I'm going down tomorrow. So flying down in the morning, flying back in the afternoon. So that's going to be a nice little fun trip. And then
seriously.
That's how you get diamond status. Day trips.
Yeah, then I'll be in LA next week. So going out for Airbnb's product release, fly out Monday, come back Wednesday.
Why LA?
What?
Why LA?
That's where they're doing their release. I think that's where they did it last year too, where they like rebuilt the up house like on that sound stage. So yeah.
So is there something cool? Are you going to be there with who does Chesky run around with? Obama, that's one.
I don't know. I'm excited. They said they expect some celebrity sightings, so we'll see.
Wow,
legendary.
Live tweet,
legendary.
I'll be following.
Or live tweet. We'll reshare it to LinkedIn since that's where all of our people are at. Since we don't use Twitter or X, whatever the app is. Fun stuff. Michael, same old. Come on, give me something good, something new.
He just went to a conference, Will. Like that was the excitement.
I know, but
dude,
it's
I'm good for the month. What are you talking about?
He's actually good for the year because Michael doesn't go to anything.
We took over management of a hotel last
Congrats.
week. So I can start talking about booking trends and volumes and where they're coming from and all that. So in the game now on the hotel side.
Congratulations.
Welcome.
Yeah. Welcome. You may regret it, but lovely. Brandy, anything exciting for you?
No, I'm back in Miami after like 6 weeks. So getting back into the market here and just getting reacclimated to Miami. So
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. Well, I was jealous of the Formula One race that was happening in your backyard yesterday. This weekend was a phenomenal race. So it's probably the best one of the whole season for anyone who watches. It was a great race. So you guys had a killer epic weekend.
I did see a lot of them in their police escorts.
Yes.
So
yeah. It's a good time. It's a good time. I was jelly. I was watching from home. So that was my weekend, just living vicariously through the TV as Miami Formula One was happening. But good stuff. All right. Well, we'll see everyone next week. Make sure, special episode for our GMH EU crew coming out tomorrow, where I get to join Leo and replace Sarah while he was here in Denver. We did a pre-recorded episode, and then Wednesday we'll have our hotel crew back with a guest host, and then Thursday our outdoors crew is back again. So exciting lineup of content this week on GMH. Go to our website, sign up for that newsletter so that you get the news in your inbox each and every other week. And of course, like always, we'll see you guys on the next one.